yourself enveloped in a shimmering violet mist. Your body floats in an infinite space, and a whisper echoes around you. Are you ready to transmute everything that weighs you down? You feel a subtle vibration on your skin, as if you're being tuned by a cosmic melody. Did you know that the violet flame, besides being a spiritual energy, has a vibrational frequency that can be measured? Imagine every emotion and thought emits a vibration. Anxiety vibrates at a low frequency, while gratitude and love vibrate at a high frequency. The violet flame, with its extremely high frequency, acts as a tuning fork, helping to tune our emotions to more harmonious frequencies. It's like an equalizer for the soul, adjusting the bass and treble to create a more balanced inner symphony. Scientists have proven that music and colors affect our well-being. What if the violet flame were a music and a color for the soul? But it gets even more interesting. What if I told you this frequency can be influenced by crystals? In this process of preparing for deep, restorative sleep, welcome to Sacred Sleep Whisper, the portal where your soul finds rest and renewal through the violet flame and the energy of Saint Germain. What if anxiety wasn't a problem, but a superpower in disguise? Think of anxiety as an early warning system. Our ancestors needed this superpower to detect dangers in the wild. Today, the wilderness has changed, but the system remains. The problem is that it often triggers false alarms. But what if we learn to hack this system, transforming anxiety into focus and creativity? It's like turning a blaring alarm into an inspiring melody. Stoic philosophers like Seneca taught us to use adversity as a springboard for growth. What if anxiety were our inner stoic, challenging us to be stronger? If your mind sometimes feels like a poorly tuned radio, picking up noise and interference, know that you can adjust this tuning. The secret: transforming anxiety into presence. Studies show that when we accept anxiety and redirect it, we activate parts of the brain linked to creativity and resilience. The Stoics knew this millennia ago. And what if tonight you discovered something about yourself that would change your life forever? Perhaps a fragment of the future, an answer hidden in your soul, or a memory of something you never lived. But that feels like your own. Let's begin this journey of transmutation and preparation for deep sleep. Lie down comfortably. Close your eyes and allow your body to relax completely. Breathe deeply. Inhale peace. And as you exhale, release all the tension of the day. Take another deep breath. Feel the top of your head relaxing, as if soft waves of violet light descend through your scalp, dissolving any tension. This sacred light travels through your forehead, releasing any worries, and reaches your eyes, which now relax completely. Mentally repeat: I am the violet flame, dissolving all thoughts that no longer serve me. Visualize this energy enveloping your body and allow it to lovingly envelop your jaw and throat, releasing any stored tension. Now, this wave of violet light travels down your shoulders, arms, and hands. All the weight of the day dissolves in this subtle energy. Mentally repeat: I am the violet flame, transforming all anxiety into infinite serenity. Now, the energy gently descends through your chest and heart region. Feel your heart being purified by this loving energy. Release any trapped emotions. You are free. You are safe. The light travels through your belly and solar plexus, dissolving any remaining tension and bringing a sense of comfort. Now, it descends through your legs, reaching your feet, taking away any accumulated fatigue. I am the violet flame in action, freeing myself from all worries. What if dreams were portals to other dimensions of your mind? Science has proven that during sleep, our brain processes information and consolidates memories. But what if dreams were more than that? What if they were windows to the unconscious, where our fears, desires, and potentials reside? Carl Jung called these portals archetypes, universal symbols that connect us to something greater. Imagine that as you sleep, you become an explorer of the unconscious, unraveling mysteries and finding solutions to your problems. It's as if each dream were an episode of a mystery series, where you are both the detective and the victim. Prepare yourself, because the next revelation will make you question everything you know about reality. Now, your body is completely relaxed and enveloped by this purifying essence. Prepare to journey through a world of dreams where anything is possible. Today, we will tell a story. The journey of the phoenix, rebirth through the violet fire. This is the story of a being who found, amidst the ashes of their difficulties, the strength to be reborn in light and wisdom. With each challenge, the violet flame guided them, transmuting pain into power, fear into courage, and doubts into divine certainties. Now, surrender to sleep and let this story touch your soul, showing you the infinite power of overcoming. Good night, and may the violet flame illuminate your dreams. The journey of the phoenix, rebirth through the violet fire. The night enveloped Granada in a mantle of serenity. The warm summer wind blew through the stone streets, carrying the sweet scent of jasmine and orange blossoms. In the distance, a small courtyard fountain murmured a liquid song, while the church bells chimed midnight. Ethan walked slowly, his hands in the pockets of his linen jacket, feeling his heart beat faster than it should. Anxiety was an invisible ghost, gripping his chest, making his breath short and heavy. He had tried everything: meditation, deep breathing, calming teas, but always returned to the same restlessness, an internal knot that seemed impossible to untie. That night, something drew him to Alhambra. Perhaps it was the full moon reflecting on the ancient red stone walls, or the distant melody of a lute played by a solitary musician on the stairs. The air was charged with something different, as if time there curved and intertwined in hidden dimensions. He followed a less crowded path, his footsteps echoing between the ancient corridors, until he reached a solitary viewpoint. Granada stretched out below, a sea of white roofs and winding streets, dotted with the warm lights of street lamps. There, enveloped by the beauty of the night, Ethan closed his eyes and sighed. That's when he felt a subtle perfume in the air. Something more than just jasmine or warm earth. A slightly sweet, mystical aroma, like lavender and myrrh incense. A shiver ran through his skin. As he opened his eyes, a figure enveloped in a violet glow hovered before him, a tall man with noble features, wearing a purple tunic adorned with gold details. His gaze was deep and serene, as if seeing through the layers of the soul. Ethan. His voice was soft but carried an indescribable strength. The young man felt time slow down. His heart, which had been pounding in his chest, now beat at a calm rhythm. "Who are you?" His voice came out almost as a whisper. "I am a friend, a guide, and I am here because you called." The wind blew stronger, and for a moment, the violet light around the figure shone intensely, as if embracing Ethan in a comforting warmth. The presence of that man radiated an unknown peace, something Ethan had never felt before. It was as if his soul recognized that energy, even though his mind was still trying to understand what was happening. "I called," Ethan murmured, feeling a pleasant warmth spread through his chest. The man smiled, slightly inclining his head. "In your thoughts, in your deepest longings, you asked for healing, for understanding, and the answer came." The air around them seemed to vibrate softly, as if made of something more than wind and night breeze. Ethan noticed that the noises of the city seemed distant, as if they were in a space between time and reality. Only the murmur of the orange tree leaves and the delicate song of a nightingale were present. He looked around, feeling the night scents with unusual clarity. The earthy aroma of the ancient stones mixed with the humidity of the surrounding vegetation. He could almost taste the air, a subtle hint of orange blossom and spices, as if a distant memory of something sacred lingered in the environment. "Who are you?" he asked again, but this time without fear, only with curiosity. "You can call me Germain, if you wish." The mention of the name brought a slight chill to Ethan's spine. He had heard of Saint Germain in some books and videos about spirituality, but he never imagined having such a tangible experience. "Am I dreaming?" Germain laughed softly, and his laughter had a sound almost musical, like the distant chime of crystal bells. "If you were, would that make what you're feeling any less real?" Ethan couldn't answer. What mattered was the sensation. The weight of anxiety, which had accompanied him for so long, seemed to have dissolved in that instant. Germain extended his hand, and a soft violet glow pulsed in his palm. The flame danced without consuming anything, as if made of pure energy. "This is the violet flame, an energy of transmutation, healing, and rebirth. You carry it within you, but you have forgotten. I am here to remind you." The young man looked fascinated at the flame, feeling a subtle warmth on his skin. It wasn't a painful burn, but a comforting touch, like the morning sun warming the skin after a cold night. Germain made a gentle gesture, and the flame spread through the air around them, enveloping Ethan in a mantle of violet light. A sense of lightness took over his body, as if his soul were being freed from invisible shackles. He closed his eyes and felt the soft sound of the wind, the sweet scent of lavender and myrrh, the subtle touch of violet energy on his skin, the faint taste of something unknown yet familiar, like a forgotten memory. And, for the first time in a long time, he breathed deeply without feeling the weight in his chest. Germain observed in silence, with the serene gaze of one who knows that everything happens in its own time. The journey has begun, Ethan, and with each step, you will be reborn a little more. The violet glow gently dissipated in the air, like mist dissolving under the first ray of sun. But inside Ethan, something had changed. For the first time in years, he felt that he was not alone in his battle against anxiety. But then, like an unexpected wave, a familiar sensation returned, a tightness in the chest, cold hands, the mind racing to process what it all was. And what if it was just his imagination? What if, instead of a spiritual encounter, it was just another episode of his mind playing tricks? Germain seemed to read his thoughts. The human mind has a habit of imprisoning itself in its own chains, even when the key is within reach. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, breathing deeply. I want to believe. But there's always this fear, always this voice inside me saying I'm not enough, that everything will go wrong. Anxiety is not your enemy, Ethan, said Germain. His voice soft but firm. It is just a messenger. It's trying to show you something. But you've been fighting it instead of listening to it. Ethan furrowed his brow. Listen to my anxiety? That doesn't make sense. Close your eyes, instructed Germain. Hesitantly, Ethan obeyed. The sound of the distant fountain seemed clearer now. The wind touched his skin like invisible fingers. Where do you feel the anxiety in your body? Germain's voice came as a distant whisper. Ethan swallowed hard. In my chest. Like a weight. And my hands, they're cold. Now, breathe deeply and enter that feeling. Don't run from it. What is it trying to tell you? Ethan tried to concentrate. At first, it seemed impossible. But then, something surfaced, a memory. He was a child, lying in bed, listening to his parents argue in the other room. He felt fear. He felt that, somehow, he needed to be perfect for things not to fall apart. His eyes opened. I always thought that if I wasn't good enough, everything around me would crumble. Germain nodded. And so your anxiety was born, not as an enemy, but as an attempt to protect you. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. For years, he fought against this feeling, tried to push it away, silence it. But what if, instead of resisting, he accepted it? The violet flame glowed in Germain's palm again. The energy of transmutation does not destroy, he explained. It transforms. Just as fire reduces something to ashes but allows it to be reborn stronger. You don't need to get rid of your anxiety, you need to integrate it, Understand that it is not you. Ethan closed his eyes again. He imagined the violet flame in his chest, warming the internal cold, dissolving the weight. He felt the energy pulsing in his hands, transforming fear into courage. A tear rolled down his face, but it was a different kind of tear, not of despair, but of relief. The wind blew again, carrying with it the scent of earth and night-blooming flowers. The sky over Granada sparkled with 1,000,000 stars, as if each one contained a secret to be revealed. Ethan opened his eyes, breathing deeply. "I am ready." Germain smiled. "Then the true journey begins now." In the following days, Ethan felt that something inside him had changed. There were still moments of anxiety, but now he no longer saw them as enemies. When the tightness in his chest arose, he closed his eyes and remembered Germain's words. "Listen to your anxiety." Instead of fighting it, he breathed deeply, imagined the violet flame enveloping that feeling, and watched it dissolve, transform. But real life wasn't as simple as a mystical moment under Granada's moon. He worked as a freelance translator, and that morning, when he opened his emails, he saw a message that made his heart race. It was from an important client, a book editor who had praised his work and offered a new project. But the deadline was tight, and the book was extensive. The old Ethan would have panicked. His mind would have raced, listing all the ways he could fail. But this time, he paused. He felt the tension rising and, instead of surrendering to fear, closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He got up, went to the balcony of his small apartment, and let the morning sun touch his face. He inhaled the fresh air, smelling the scent of freshly baked bread from the nearby bakery, mixed with the perfume of lavender from the neighbors' window boxes. He heard the rhythmic steps of people on the streets below, the distant sound of a guitar being played in some cafe. "I am capable," he thought, "and I am not alone." When he returned to the computer, he replied to the email with confidence. He accepted the job but asked for a slightly longer deadline. To his surprise, the editor agreed without question. That was the first small test. That night, Ethan walked to Alhambra again. The city seemed different now, or perhaps it was he who was changing. The details that had previously gone unnoticed now seemed more vivid. The texture of the ancient walls under his fingers, the glow of the lanterns reflecting on the cobblestones wet with dew, the soft sound of water running in small hidden fountains in the gardens. Germain was there, waiting, as if he knew Ethan would come. "Life will always respond to your energy, Ethan," he said. "When you change, the world changes with you." "I felt that today," Ethan replied. "For the first time in years, I made a decision without being dominated by fear." Germain smiled, and the violet flame glowed softly around him. "But the journey is not over yet. You will need to face something bigger. Something that has been stored away for a long time." The wind blew stronger, bringing a premonition that deeper challenges lay ahead. Ethan swallowed hard but did not look away. He was ready. That night, Ethan had a dream unlike any other. He was back in his childhood home, but something was wrong. The walls seemed to be closing in on him. The air was dense, filled with old emotions, fear, insecurity, a desperate desire to be perfect to avoid conflicts. In the corner of the room, a younger version of himself was curled up, knees to chest, eyes wide with terror. Outside the door, raised voices echoed down the hallway. His parents arguing, as had happened so many times. Ethan felt his heart race. He wanted to help the boy, wanted to tell him that everything would be okay. But when he took a step forward, a dark shadow rose before him. It was tall, formless, pulsating like living mist, and it had a voice that didn't speak words but whispered fears. You will never be enough. What if everything goes wrong? What if you fail? Ethan felt his body freeze. That shadow was not something external. It was his own anxiety, manifested in tangible form. For years, he had fought against it, tried to bury it, silence it. But now, standing before it, he realized that running had never worked. That's when he remembered Germain. At that very moment, he felt a subtle warmth in his chest. The violet flame. He breathed deeply and, instead of running or fighting the shadow, took a step forward. I see you, he said, his voice firm. The shadow trembled. I know what you are. I know where you came from, and I know you only have power over me because I allowed it. The boy in the corner looked up, his eyes tearful but full of hope. The shadow roared, trying to envelop him, but Ethan closed his eyes and focused. He visualized the violet flame growing within him, expanding beyond his body. I no longer run. When he opened his eyes, the violet light enveloped him completely. The shadow screamed silently and began to dissipate, like mist under the morning sun. In the next moment, Ethan woke up. He was lying in bed in his small apartment in Granada, his heart pounding, but in a different way. It wasn't fear, it was power. Outside, the first rays of sun tinged the sky a soft violet. He got up and walked to the balcony. He breathed in the fresh morning air, feeling lighter than he had ever felt before. And, in the reflection of the glass, for a brief moment, he saw Germain smiling. In the days following the dream, Ethan felt a tangible change. It wasn't as if the anxiety had disappeared completely, but now he saw it differently. Whenever he felt the tightness in his chest returning, instead of panicking, he closed his eyes and evoked the violet flame. He breathed deeply, accepted what he felt, and allowed the transmuting energy to flow through him. And it worked. Walking through Granada, he perceived everything with more intensity. The colors seemed more vibrant, the vivid blue of the sky, the golden hue of the ancient stones in the sun, the green of the leaves dancing in the wind. The scents were more pronounced, the fresh coffee from the cafes, the sweet perfume of the flowers, the breeze carrying the aroma of spices from the market. He was present. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly here. His work also began to flow. Before, Reviewing texts had been an exhausting exercise, as his mind always questioned whether he was doing enough. Now, he worked at a more natural pace, with less self-criticism, and, to his surprise, he began to enjoy what he did more. But the biggest test came a few days later. Ethan was sitting in a cafe when he received an unexpected message. It was from his sister, Claire. "Hey, I'm in Spain for work and thought I'd visit. Can we talk?" His heart skipped a beat. They hadn't seen each other in years. Their relationship had always been complicated, marked by resentments and misunderstandings. For a long time, he had avoided any contact, fearing that the past would resurface. In the past, just the idea of this meeting would have triggered an anxiety attack. But now, something inside him was different. He breathed deeply, closed his eyes for a moment, and felt the violet energy around him. And he replied, "Yes, let's talk." Deep down, he knew this meeting would be another step in his healing journey. The next afternoon, Ethan walked slowly down Paseo de los Tristes, one of Granada's most picturesque streets. The name, which meant Promenade of the Sad, seemed ironic now. For the first time in years, he didn't feel sad. He felt ready. The air carried the scent of warm earth and wildflowers growing on the stone walls. The sound of water running in the ancient channels mixed with the soft laughter of tourists and the strumming of a guitar from some street musician. He spotted Claire sitting at a table in a small cafe in the shade of a fig tree. His heart raced a little, but he inhaled deeply and felt the violet energy enveloping him like a protective cloak. "Claire," he said as he approached. She looked up, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Her face bore familiar features, but also the marks of time, as if they had both aged a little more than they should have. "Ethan," she replied with a hesitant smile. He sat down across from her, and the waiter brought a cup of jasmine tea, its delicate fragrance spreading between them. There was silence at first, but this time, Ethan didn't feel the desperate need to fill it. He was simply present. "I didn't know if you'd agree to see me," Claire confessed, absently stirring her cup. Ethan observed her for a moment. Before, his mind would have raced with assumptions. Does she blame me? What if we argue again? What if I say something wrong? But now, he simply felt. "I didn't know if I was ready either," he admitted honestly. "But I don't think it's ever about being ready, it's about choosing." She nodded, and the wind blew softly, making a few dry leaves dance on the stone floor. For a long time, Ethan had avoided confronting the past, but now, with Claire sitting before him, he realized that it wasn't the past that had hurt him, it was the weight he carried for never having let it go. "I felt like I had to be perfect, like if I made a mistake, everything would fall apart," he said. "I think that idea followed me for a long time." Claire sighed. "I carried a lot of things too. I always thought you left because you didn't care anymore, but I think each of us was just trying to survive in our own way." There was another silence, But this time, it was a silence of understanding. Ethan looked at his hands and imagined the violet flame there, glowing softly. He didn't need to change the past, only transform it within himself. He looked up and smiled at Claire. "How about we let all of this go and just have this tea?" She laughed, and the tension in the air dissipated. That's how true healing happens. The days following the meeting with Claire were like a calm river after a storm. Ethan felt a new lightness within, as if he were finally living without carrying the invisible weight that had accompanied him for so long. But he knew the journey was not yet over. That night, he returned to Alhambra, feeling the silent call that always led him there. The soft lights illuminated the stone paths, and the moon reflected on the ancient walls, giving the place an ethereal glow. And then, as expected, Germain appeared. "You have taken great steps," he said, his voice like a breeze that caressed the soul. Ethan smiled. "I feel like I'm starting to understand. But, at the same time, I feel like there's something more, something I still need to face." Germain nodded. "Yes, and it's closer than you imagine." The air around them grew denser, charged with a different energy. A faint violet mist began to form, and Ethan felt his heart race, not with fear, but with anticipation. During a moment of meditation with Germain, Ethan realizes that the violet flame is not just a light but also emits a sound, a soft hum, like the singing of vibrating crystals. He perceives that every time he is anxious, this frequency decreases and becomes almost imperceptible. When he relaxes and surrenders to the moment, the vibration increases. This reveals an unexpected secret. The violet energy is always present, but our perception of it depends on our inner state. This idea connects with modern discoveries about the vibration of emotions. Feelings of fear and anxiety have low frequencies, while elevated states of consciousness, such as love and gratitude, resonate at higher frequencies. What if we could tune our minds like a radio station, and access the frequency of balance whenever we wanted? Suddenly, he realized where he was. It was no longer Alhambra. He was in the middle of an unknown landscape, enveloped in shades of violet and gold, as if the universe itself were breathing around him. There was a pulsating energy in the air, something vast and ancient, and at the center of that space, a golden door glowed softly. "What is this?" Ethan asked. Germain observed him with gentle eyes. "The final piece. The answer you have sought your entire life." Ethan felt a shiver run through his skin. He knew he had to cross that door. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Ethan stood before the golden door, feeling the energy pulsing around him like a living heart. The violet glow flickered softly, like a flame waiting to be fed. He knew that by crossing it, something within him would change forever. He breathed deeply. He placed his hand on the door, and reality dissolved. Suddenly, he was in an infinite space where time did not exist. Colors vibrated in the air like notes of a soundless melody, and the sensation was of absolute peace. At the center of that vast nothingness, a figure appeared. It was him, but not the Ethan he saw in the mirror every day. It was a more serene, wiser version of himself, a reflection of who he could be. Free from his fears and limitations. The other Ethan smiled. Finally, Ethan felt a lump in his throat. What is this? It is you, beyond fear, beyond pain, beyond the limitations you have imposed on yourself. He felt the words like a warm wave coursing through his body. I fought so hard against my anxiety, against this feeling that I was never enough. Because you believed you had to get rid of it, but the truth, Ethan, is that it has always been a part of you, a part that only needed to be heard, accepted, and transmuted. Ethan closed his eyes. He understood. Everything he had been through, every fear and uncertainty, every night he felt incapable, none of them were enemies, but teachers. Each one had brought him here. When he opened his eyes again, the violet flame danced in his hands, stronger than ever. He smiled, and, with one final step, he integrated everything he was. When the violet light dissipated, Ethan expected to feel peace. He expected to feel whole, but something was still there, a presence, a weight in the air. He looked around and realized he was no longer in that cosmic golden space. Nor was he in Alhambra. He was in an old, familiar room. The faded wallpaper, the toys scattered on the floor, the small bed with light blue sheets. The smell of wood and dust was unmistakable. It was his childhood bedroom, and sitting on the bed, curled up like a wounded bird, was himself, a younger version. Perhaps 8 or 9 years old. The boy looked at Ethan with wide eyes, and his breathing was short and hurried. Then Ethan felt it, the weight in his chest, the cold hands, the lump in his throat. The anxiety was there again, but this time, it did not take the form of a monstrous shadow. This time, it was Ethan himself. The boy trembled, holding his hands against his chest, his eyes pleading. I don't want to feel this. I want it to stop. His voice was fragile but filled with deep, ancient pain. Ethan knelt before him, and his first reaction was to want to say that everything would be okay, that he would overcome it. But he remembered German's words. Anxiety is not your enemy, it is a messenger. So, instead of pushing it away, he embraced it. He held his younger self in his arms, feeling the small, trembling body fit against his own. I know, Ethan whispered. I know it hurts. The boy sobbed. I just wanted to be perfect. I wanted them to like me. I know. The boy looked at him, his eyes filled with tears. Will you forget me? Ethan felt his heart ache. Then, he understood. For years, he had tried to bury that part of himself, push it away, exorcise it. But it was not something to be destroyed. It was something to be embraced. Ethan held the boy's face gently and smiled. "Never." And at that moment, the boy smiled too. His eyes, once filled with fear, now had a different glow, a violet glow. The boy's body began to glow, transforming into light, until it finally dissolved into the air. Ethan felt something change within him, not a shock, not an impact, but a profound silence, a complete acceptance. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was back in Alhambra. But now, everything seemed different, not because the world had changed, but because he had. The light exploded around him, enveloping him like an eternal embrace. Ethan opened his eyes. He was back in Alhambra, standing under the starry sky of Granada. The night breeze caressed his face, and the sweet scent of jasmine hung in the air. But something inside him had changed forever. He looked at his hands, expecting to see the violet flame, but realized it no longer needed to be visible. It now burned within him, pulsing with every beat of his heart. Germain was there, observing him with a serene smile. "Now you understand." Ethan nodded. Anxiety was never the enemy. It was a call to remember who I am. Exactly. And now, you can live without fear. Ethan took a deep breath. For the first time, he did not feel the usual weight. He felt space, freedom, peace. In the distance, the bells of a church rang, marking the passage of time. But inside Ethan, time no longer mattered. He smiled, and began to walk. In one of the encounters with Germain, Ethan touches the violet flame and is transported to a moment from his childhood that he had completely forgotten, a moment of pure joy, before all the worries and anxieties took over his mind. This memory surfaces with a mystical detail. He sees his childhood self playing with a ball of violet light, a symbol that this connection has always existed within him but was forgotten over time. This reinforces the idea that anxiety is not an enemy but a reminder of something deeper. As ancient spiritual traditions say, our soul already knows the answer, we just need to remember. What if all the peace we seek is already within us, just waiting to be rediscovered? Months later, Ethan was sitting in a cafe, reviewing the introduction of the book he was translating. It was a book about spiritual transformation, and he smiled as he realized how the words resonated with his own story. Outside, Granada shimmered under the afternoon sun. People walked leisurely, and a soft guitar melody blended with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. He closed his eyes for a moment and felt the violet energy within him. As the story concludes, when Ethan walks through Granada feeling different, he has a final glimpse. For a brief moment, he sees the city not just as a collection of streets and buildings, but as a vast energy field pulsating with life. He realizes that certain buildings vibrate with a special energy, as if they were portals of transformation. This concept connects with the idea of sacred places around the world, where the energy seems more intense. Some cultures believe that cities like Machu Picchu, Jerusalem, and even certain parts of Egypt possess frequencies that can catalyze our spiritual evolution. Could it be that some places hold invisible secrets, waiting for us to be ready to see them? There were still challenges ahead, but now, he knew he could face them with serenity, because the violet flame would never leave him. The violet flame is more than just energy, it is a reminder that within you exists a sacred fire, capable of transforming any shadow into light, any fear into wisdom. Today, on this journey, you have experienced that anxiety is not an enemy to be fought but a messenger of the soul, asking to be heard, understood, and transmuted. When we accept this flame within us, something changes, our perception expands, our dreams take on new meanings, and we discover that reality is much more magical than we imagined. And now, an invitation. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe deeply. Feel this energy still vibrating around you. What do you choose to transmute today? Your journey does not end here. On the contrary, it is just beginning. And now I want to know from you, have you ever felt your anxiety transform into creativity or intuition? What was that experience like? If you could change your relationship with anxiety, what would you choose to feel instead? Have you ever had a dream that brought a powerful message to your life? Share in the comments. If this message resonated with you, leave a like so that this energy can reach more people. Write in the comments about your experience with the violet flame and the transmutation of emotions. And if you want to deepen this journey, download the exclusive ebook in the first pinned comment and description. Continue this discovery now. Click on one of the videos on the screen and let this flame guide you deeper into your transformation. Good night, soul traveler. May your dreams be portals to new possibilities.